Hello, everyone. Welcome. And it's good to be here with you all. I'm Lisa Witter, and it's been a while since I've been out in the world and on video and in a show type of setting in a while. So I just wanted to do this quick little live stream and say hello and sort of get my feet wet again with live stream and just the show sort of situation. So some of you who've been with me for many years know that quite a while ago I had a show called The Power of Practice. It was back in the days of Google Hangouts, and I had a regular weekly show called The Power of Practice, like I just said, and went from there to actually working with Barbara Marks Hubbard and Mark Goffney for several years, or a few years, I should say, and was the host of a weekly gathering that we did called Evolutionary Church. So I've been in this world for a while, but I've taken a couple months off and I'm getting back in again and just coming back to reintroduce and say hi once again. So what I wanted to talk about, because it seems really appropriate, is I want to drop into the field this idea of being authentic and being our authentic self. I feel like it's been an interesting journey for myself in finding and discovering who I am and who my authentic self is over the years. I mean, it started back, I can remember in my early 30s when I was married at the time, and with my daughter was only 2 years old, 2 or 3, and I was wanting a divorce. And as those of you who've gone through divorce know, it's very hard and it's a huge life transition. But I can say that was one of those points, one of those turning points in my life when I was discovering who I was. And at that point in time, in addition to being a wife, having those labels of wife and mother, I was heavily or very involved in the triathlon community in the Bay Area. And I was known as one of the coaches. I coached a lot of triathletes at the time. And so it was really at that time that I questioned who I was. And I was asking myself, like, really, who am I? And when I went through that period of getting divorced, I also divorced, I would say, my life as a triathlete. I've been training, racing, and coaching for 20 years, and I left that world. And I went through a major identity crisis, like, just who am I and what am I doing here? And just to sort of fast forward that story to where I am now, that process of finding who I was and who I am, I have come to realize is a never-ending journey. Discovering our authentic self is really this process of an unfolding of who we are, and it requires us to know who we are. In order to discover your authentic self and to be your authentic self, you can't do that without knowing who you are. And that brings us back to, back in the long time ago when the Greeks said, Aristotle and Plato said, know thyself. I think it was the Greek oracle, actually, of the oracle at Delphi, that had said, know thyself. And that has held true through the ages, and it's been a spiritual truth that as we know ourselves, the more we know ourselves, obviously, the more authentic we can be. But I think that there's also this interesting distinction to be made between who is my authentic self and who is my true self, because they are two different things. But I think on our journey, our own spiritual journeys, the first thing we have to know is who we are as an authentic self before we can know who we are as a true self. And I'm not planning on going into that discussion right here, because that can be a discussion that unfolds over time and is a very, very important discussion to look at. But I just wanted to put into this space, as we think about who we are as an authentic self. I think what I've discovered in working with people and talking to people is that oftentimes we get confused, or can get confused, and think we're coming from our authentic self, or think we know who our authentic self is, but really what is appearing is our conditioning, our the conditions that veil who our authentic self is, so we can't really even see who our authentic self is, which goes back to this point that I was talking about, is we have to know ourselves. How do we know ourselves? Well, again, another huge discussion, and I'm not going to bring it all here. I'm just sort of opening up this discussion because I think it's a good place to start, and it's a place I'd like to go with you over the coming weeks. But what it requires is practice. And I go back to this idea where I had this show, it was in 2014, so now over 5 years ago, The Power of Practice. And in order to discover who we really are requires certain types of practices. It could be self-inquiry, looking within, doing practices around understanding our values and our needs and our beliefs. But even deeper than that, knowing our authentic self requires some deeper practices, I believe now, over the years of study, is including meditation, being one of them. But in any case, the practices are great, right? But practice is really nothing unless you understand how to do it. And one of the things I always used to say in my intro in The Power of Practice is that creating breakthroughs in our life, creating quantum breakthroughs in our life, isn't about doing certain things. It's not about just mechanically doing these practices. It's about doing things in a certain way, which requires consistent practice. So for instance, we could meditate, but you could be sitting there. My husband and I have this this joke about meditation, well, were you sleep-itating or were you meditating? Because you can doze off. Your thoughts can go one place or another, and you're not really doing the practice. You're doing the mechanical steps, but you're not doing the practice consciously. And I'm just using meditation as one example, but there are many examples of doing things versus doing things in a certain way, right? The difference between being mechanical about the way that we practice versus being intentional and conscious. And that in and of itself, being intentional, being conscious, requires practice because it requires concentration and focus. So those are some thoughts and seeds that I'm just putting into the space right now, because I'd like to begin to explore them with you over the coming weeks. And I'm going to do them right here on my page, which this page is Lisa Ingalls' page. And if you like this page, you will be notified of my upcoming shows, of my upcoming live streams. And I do plan on doing those on a regular basis. And I'll also be posting the recordings of these over on my YouTube channel, which is Lisa Ingalls. So please do subscribe to that as well. And that's it. I just wanted to dip in, say hi, see you all for a minute, and dip out, and hope you're having a wonderful day. And I will give you a bow to your beautiful self and namaste. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you very soon.